Now, one of the new government's most delicate positions is the way it deals with Australia's relationship with China. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has had to tackle this head-on in his second working day as Prime Minister at the Quad Leaders meeting in Tokyo. So let's bring in here Tim Harcourt, Professor and Chief Economist at the Institute for Public Policy and Governance at the University of Technology, Sydney. Tim, always good to have you on the program. I just want to go to this point about Anthony Albanese and China, because to me this seems like a significant and very serious situation that on one hand business is actually calling for some thawing in the relationship, and yet on the other hand, from a geopolitical point of view, they're going to continue to hang tough.
No, that's right, Ross. I don't think people should be fooled. Labor under Albanese and Penny Wong will not be a soft touch towards China. I think they're going to govern much like Gough Whitlam and Bob Hawke, which was, in the words of Steve FitzGerald, the first ambassador to China. You know, Gough was neither a Sinophobe nor a Sinophile, but saw China as rising in the world, and so we pragmatically had to deal with them. And even though we have a great love for the Chinese people and Chinese culture, you know, dealing with the government is a very, very different story. So I think Albanese and Penny Wong and the government will take that sort of approach to China in that Gough Whitlam Hawke tradition.
OK, so let's pick up here just a little of what Anthony Albanese said at that Quad meeting today. He gave a press conference and he acknowledged the congratulatory letter that he's received from the Ambassador of China.
I have received now a letter of congratulations from Premier Lee, as I have from other world leaders, and I welcome that. We will respond appropriately in time.
But here's the reality, Tim, is that Australia has trade with China of around $250 billion each year. That's two-way trade. Australia needs the revenue from the minerals in particular that it sells to China. China needs those minerals to actually help create its infrastructure. So it's almost a symbiotic relationship. They need each other, notwithstanding the tensions that exist.
You're quite, Ross. I mean, Australia needs China as a significant market for our small businesses as well as our larger commodity exporters. But China needs us. You know, 1 billion people, 300 million in the middle class. They need food security, they need energy security, and they need a high-quality education for future generations. So ultimately, commercially, we're going to have to work together. But I think what Prime Minister Albanese is signalling in some ways is that you know, China has changed under Xi Jinping, and so it's quite different than you know, previous relations. And I think that's why he's, you know, treading carefully, you know, not antagonising China unnecessarily, not using megaphone diplomacy unnecessarily, and ensuring a great affection for the Chinese people, but being very careful to protect our interests in the region and those of our, you know, major trading partners in the region. And indeed our own national sovereignty and democratic values.
OK, so let's again go back to the new Prime Minister today, talking about exactly that point, that he thinks that it's China that's changed, not Australia, and not our policy.
The truth is that Australia is a great democracy. We stand for our values, which are consistent. I, whenever asked, must have been hundreds of times now, have said that the demands which were placed by China are entirely inappropriate. We reject all of them. We'll determine our own values. We'll determine Australia's future direction. It's China that's changed, not Australia.
And quite clearly in that meeting and in the press conference, some of the pictures that we've seen today were all about Anthony Albanese making certain that the relationship with the United States was as strong as ever. One point for you though, Tim, even in the election and in the voting that took place, it was considered that many that were part of the Chinese diaspora to Australia, that they might have even been instrumental in helping the Labor Party win many seats, because they're disappointed with some of the rhetoric that's gone on and the relationship between Australia and China. So even within the business community and maybe even the Chinese business community in Australia, there is really, if you like, pressure, a push for somehow that thawing of relationships to allow the trade to open up again.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the business community, people of all backgrounds in the small business community and in larger corporate sector wanted a thaw. We did the series after the pandemic, interviewing many people who said that. And many of my friends and family members in the Chinese Australian community really were quite hurt by the rhetoric that was put about in the election campaign by former Prime Minister Scott Morrison, former Defence Minister Peter Dutton. It really didn't help matters, and Chinese Australians are loyal Australians like anyone else. And in some ways, I think this is a reset. I mean, China did call Prime Minister Albanese up. That's a start. They haven't been calling up many people for a while, so there is an opportunity. But I think Anthony Albanese as Prime Minister is right to be wary, because China has changed, and I think that's why it's important, to build important relationships right around the world and not use a megaphone diplomacy, not upset Chinese Australians, and also don't go it alone. The whole world is grappling with China. It's all had disputes with China, so it's best to work in a regional multilateral setting to help China come back into the international community in a constructive way as well.
I was going to point out very briefly for you, Tim, and that is that if you have a look at China trying to recover from its COVID lockdowns, interest rates have been cut on mortgages. You've actually had a situation where now tax breaks are there. So it is a point now where there's going to be significant stimulus, and Australia, with the right settings, could actually be beneficiaries of that.
Well, that's right. I mean, given that Prime Minister Albanese was an infrastructure guru in previous Labor governments, infrastructure services going to play a big role in the future building of China-Australian relations. So I think that does matter. I think it's quite useful. We'll see how she goes, but having a Prime Minister partially of Chinese heritage is useful. I mean, the Chinese can't play any race card on us now, and. I think we just deal with China pragmatically, neither, as Gough said, as neither Sinophile nor Sinophobe, just a pragmatic engagement realistically in the nation. And China knows, despite the commercial ties, that we have strong defence ties with the United States.
Yeah, Tim Harcourt there, always good to have in the program. Many thanks for your time today.